Welcome to the thrilling world of Security Squawk, where we explore cybersecurity. Guiding you through online threats, we'll aid you in understanding safety protocols and trends. Meet our gurus, Bryan from Exact IT, Reginald from Arc Solvers, and Randy from Tech Rescue. Together, we'll delve into current events and hot cybersecurity topics, helping you comprehend their impact. Stay informed, stay secure. Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. Buckle up, let's dive in.
Welcome to Security Squawk, the business of cybersecurity. I'm Bryan Hornung with Randy, Bryan, and Reginald Andre. What's up, guys? How are you?
Good morning. Doing well.
Yeah, doing great over here. We got like 8 inches of rain in Texas last night in a lot of places. So We're always excited about that.
If you hear the roar of thunder, we're getting thunderstorms, so we're in the same boat. So.
Yep. I think we sent it on your way. It's just moving really slow. So good luck.
So here we go. Today, Randy, you're going to open us up with a 9 million person breach at Medtronic. I'm going to talk about a cyber attack on the city of Ackworth. And Andre is going to close us out with the first ransomware attack run start to finish by an AI. So, Randy, 9 million people just got a letter telling them their name, their birthday, social security number, and health history are sitting in criminal hands, stolen from one of the biggest medical device makers on earth. Yep. So what's happening here?
Well, so it's actually the biggest, supposedly it's what I read, the biggest medical device company. And the old arch nemesis group, Shiny Hunters, was involved here. It doesn't look like it was a Salesforce attack. Looks like they were able to get in by basically pretending to be IT and call somebody up who's in the company and say, hey, we need to get you compliant or whatever. And the guy's like, or the girl's like, okay, let's do it. And so then boom, Shiny Hunters is in. So basically what they did, there's a couple of things here I want to unpack. So first off, this organization, Medtronic, appears that they had a disaster recovery plan in place. Also appears that they were segmenting their network. So what happened was the bad guys got into a server. Federal law in the US requires, if you buy a medical device, that the manufacturer has your PII information, that they keep that. They tie it to the serial number of that device. So that way, if there's ever a recall, or whatever, or some kind of update or whatever that you have to know about, they're required by law to keep all that information. So this is not a case of, they kept this stuff around or whatever, and they shouldn't have. So they should have kept it around. So Shiny Hunters gets into this server. And yes, initially, this was a couple of months ago, initially 9 million records were said to have been involved in the leak. Okay. But it gets twisty here a little bit. There's a few little plot twists. So first off, Shiny Hunters posts on their site and says, we've got 9 million records. Deadline, let's just say May 1, okay? Because this happened back in April, and the public notice just went out about a little over a week ago. But anyway, so Shiny Hunters posts this notice that basically says, hey, here's your ransom day. It's May 1. We have 9 million records. We're about to release them. That's one of the things Shiny Hunters does. When they get your stuff, they twist your arm by going public with it. Crazy thing, guys. Before that date comes, all of the stuff got deleted off of Shiny Hunter's site. And we all know what that means. If you're listening on the show, what that means is that Shiny Hunters basically was most likely paid a ransom, and or they worked out some kind of negotiation, which obviously involves money. But then everything was pulled off of the dark web. And from Medtronic's side, it was settled. But this is where it twists even again, okay? What happened then was, even though it's been pulled back, some person who has a medical device. They said about the same time that this leak happened, they started getting all kinds of spam and phishing emails, which that's good enough to trigger federally by federal law. That's good enough to trigger a class action lawsuit. So here's the twist, y'all, is that the data appears to have been deleted, but we still have lawsuits that are coming in and saying that somehow Shiny Hunters must have deleted it. And I've been thinking about that, man. How are they going to prove in court that it was the Shiny Hunters data or wasn't the Shiny Hunters data that caused this lady in the actual thing, in this lady to then open up a lawsuit? So that's the first twist. The second twist is this. Here's a company that seems to have segmented everything. They had an incident response plan in action that went right into action. They seem to have all the things. Here's my take on that. They seem to have all the things that you needed to have in 2025. Yes, you have to have zero trust. Yes, you've got to think through if they get into one part of your system, they can't get into the others. But business owners out there, we really have to start building our cybersecurity plan. Yes, all that other stuff still matters, but what really matters now is identification and character behavior, like behavioral monitoring, and then also identification based on, like, people have to have set identities. This also brings up a whole thing of regular old MFA that you get, where you get a code or whatever. That's easily tricked, because you can call the user up and say, hey, we got to get you compliant. Let's do this thing. And, they're like, okay, I want to be helpful. Then they give you their code, and then boom, they've done something wrong. So we've got to look at bringing in policies. Yes, it's still zero trust, but you got to look at bringing in policies that look at identification of the user, that look at behavioral patterns, and then that also bring in phishing resistant multi-factor authentication. So like a passkey or something like that, it's tied to a device. It's tied to something that you have physically. Is it 100% perfect? No, but it's more phishing resistant than just having a code. So a lot of little twists here. Would love to hear you guys' opinion on this, or if you had any questions or comments.
Well, for me, first thing, kudos, because they segmented their network. That's something that we see all the time, where companies get hacked and their phone systems are down, their Microsoft emails are down, or their email systems are down, their extranet site is down, and it's like, come on, like, where's the segmentation? Because what they had to do basically is turn off a off switch, and everything went off because it's not segmented. Another thing that I wanted to talk about is, Randy, did they say how they got in yet, or that hasn't been disclosed?
I couldn't find exact information of how they got in, but it really appears this phase, Shiny Hunter seems to have been moving past, basically, I'll just call it the Salesforce phase, and where they've really been leaning in the whole year, but especially recently, is tricking people into giving them MFA. So you call up somebody in the company, maybe they are an admin, maybe they're not. But that would hold true just generically speaking, but I don't know the exact way yet.
Yeah, and that kind of segments to where I was getting at, is like, they did the right things. They did the segmentations, but if it turns out that it was something as simple as that, right? The oldest trick in the book now, it goes back to the users. At the end of the day, companies, I looked it up, they're a $33 billion annual revenue company. They have roughly 95,000 employees in 150 countries. So with that span, there's just no way you can just make sure that each user of those 95,000 people, Shiny Hunters just have to be once right? The old famous George Bush quote. So, another thing too is, this is just realizing that this isn't like a company that's doing insulin and, medical products. They're a data company. So even though they see themselves as like we're manufacturing devices, but they have a lot of data, and this is just kind of another reason. So I give a thumbs up on paying the ransom, but like you said, did they really delete it? Like, is the bad guys going to sign a affidavit saying, a notarized affidavit saying, yeah, we deleted everything. So we don't really know that. So time will tell, I guess, when the class action lawsuits come.
Right. Well, and they already are coming. So that's one of the crazy things here is we've seen dozens of stories this year where, well, maybe not dozens, but at least many or several where ransom was paid, data was deleted or whatever, and no lawsuits came out of it. But here comes somebody who just said, well, when this happened, my phishing and spam shot through the roof, and it's got to be because of this class action lawsuit. That's really crazy.
You wouldn't believe, number one, if you touch health data, HIPAA gives you 60 days to report a breach, right? Yep. So blowing through that, number one, is going to be a problem for this organization if that ends up being true. But
looks like it was.
Let's talk about shiny hunters. This organized crew, that spent the better part of 2025 tricking employees over the phone to get into cloud systems like Salesforce. It appears they've teamed up with another group called Scattered Spider, who evidently one of their people was arrested and extradited back to the U.S. Over the weekend or last week. But here we go with this group teaming up with other groups, Randy, to do this kind of stuff now. Very interesting because the Shiny Hunters group is, as we know, very good at getting into cloud-based systems, right? So what it appears is they've moved on from Salesforce and now they're targeting other systems in conjunction with groups that know that they have access somehow, some way. And that's what's happening out there. So,
wow.
How it plays out is pretty simple, right? These groups like Scattered Spider, they get people that come to them, which we call initial access brokers. They get people to come to them all the time with access to certain things, right? Scattered Spider is a ransomware group. They want access to a network or a cloud system where they can encrypt. There are situations where people have access, but they can't encrypt. Mm-hmm. They can take the data and they can do things with it. And that's when you enroll a group like Shiny Hunters.
Yeah, it's like affiliation, right? Like they outsource it.
The web of affiliation just gets thicker and thicker with these guys. And that's the point, right? It's, as we go through these stories today, these groups are so specialized, but they come together to, make it really difficult for businesses to defend against, when you're not aware that all this is going on out there. So.
And it also doesn't make it easier, like, because, I was thinking, like, why hasn't the government, and obviously these guys are overseas, but like, why haven't they been able to stop it? But it's not like they have a corporate office in Russia where they're just all gathering every day, all 20 employees. They're literally scattered all over the world. So even if you do a whack-a-mole, another one's going to just, take their place.
Yep. All right, guys, moving on here. So on Monday, June 8th, the city of Ackworth got hit with a cyber attack, serious enough that they brought in outside cybersecurity professionals to help them out with the situation. They also called law enforcement, obviously. And miraculously, everything's restored. And the city is claiming that day-to-day operations were never really impacted. But here's what makes this one worth your attention. Number one, it's recent, so I wanted to bring it to everyone's attention. It's another municipal government in the United States that's been attacked, which, you know, we're in the thousands at this point of cities and counties and local towns that have been hit. On June 18th, Ackworth published its first public statement saying systems have been restored, but then they refused to discuss the nature of the attack because the investigation was ongoing. And then local media got their hands on and reported the attack, noting that city operations were functioning normally again, but officials would not answer any additional questions. So it seems like this happened, guys. And by the time people started to find out about it, the city was back up and running. So I don't know. We talk a lot on this show about ransomware and recoveries and what it takes to recover. And we know that the average recovery time is well into 30 days. It's about 24 days right about now, right? So they are under the bar here, right? So they've gotten themselves back up and running quicker than most organizations can do. And it sounds great, right? It sounds like they had their stuff together and they were able to withstand a cyber attack, or so it seems, right? But then on July 2nd, just the other day, and that's why I wanted to bring it to the show, guys, the ransomware group Inc. Ransom claimed responsibility and listed Ackworth on its leak site.
Wow.
They're threatening to release the stolen municipal data if negotiations do not occur. So what do you think's happening here, guys? We have a ransomware incident that the city's calling a cyber incident. No mention of ransomware. 3 weeks later, Inc. Ransomware posts them publicly. So that suggests one of three possibilities in my mind. That data was stolen, that there were negotiations going on and they failed, and then the city refused to pay. So what do you think's happening here? Do you think they negotiated to get the key and then never paid? Where do you think this went wrong, and how did they get the systems restored so quickly without paying?
Well, they had a backup, but the question is like, did their IT guy tell them, or hey, no, they got in, but they didn't steal any information, and then they get a surprise, letter in the mail that, hey, your stuff is we do have your data and you need to pay. Like, because they kind of felt a little confident on this, like, hey, yeah, not normal, like nothing to see here. It's like everything is back up and working. We're good. Don't worry. And then now, X amount of days later, they're getting this notice.
Yeah. So more than likely, they probably did have good backups, and more than likely, only portions of the environment were impacted. So we're probably looking at just an exfiltration event, not a ransomware event. And negotiations broke down, right? So they got into the systems. They let them know they were there. Word started getting out that this happened because people talk, especially in these small towns, right, Randy? And now here you go. And now you have a national story because they mishandled a cyber event where they tried to be all hush-hush about it, and now it's backfiring.
I don't have all the information, and I'm not trying to be judgmental here. It seems that they're not fully aware of the situation and not fully aware of what's going on. So you're right. It could have been failed negotiations. It could be the bad guys are lying, which sometimes they do that. It could also be on the inside, they're like, oh, we're good. We deleted that. We uninstalled the blah, blah, blah that we saw pop up. We're good. And they're like, potentially, I'm not blaming them of this, but it makes me wonder if they're thinking that on one side, and the bad guys are out over here that they didn't even have any idea was still going on. So it looks something's wrong, and appreciate you pointing it out, because it's not all buttoned up with a bow on top. It seems like they thought just a few days ago before Friday, right?
Yeah. Andre was like, in the green room, was kind of like, what's your story? It doesn't seem like that big of a deal. But I think there is a little bit of a big deal here. I mean, it's not a huge story. I mean, number one, it points out that, like, look, it doesn't matter how big or small you are, you can be a victim. You can get hit, right? Number two is, we see this all the time, especially governments. They try to cover up, and the city of Columbus, Ohio is, my number one example of like a mishandling of a cyber attack to the nth degree, which I heard their IT guy, their CIO resigned the other day. So very interesting. It took that long for that to play out. But yeah, so we're looking at potential data exposure, right? This group that has this Inc. ransom group has been operating roughly since about mid-2025. They've hit hundreds of companies and governments so far. They do heavily target these government entities, and most of their victims on their leak site haven't come through with public information yet. So, these guys are really good at negotiating ransoms and getting paid, but they don't have a lot of public releases of information on their website. So, it suggests that they're also trying to build themselves. They're not huge. They're building credibility, but at the same time, the ones that they have hit, they haven't published the data.
Yeah.
So,
well, and also I was just doing some research. This ransomware group involved when this came out since Friday. This is their sweet spot.
Yep.
City governments. So
yeah, correct. So these guys usually get in with phishing, leading to credential theft, and stolen VPN credentials are usually the way that they get in. So they must, so that's, that's the common threads there, Randy, right? They know that municipal governments use VPNs, right? So if we can send you an email to your government email address and trick you into typing in your VPN username and password, we got you, right? We can log in as you, and depending on what level of access you have, we'll go from there. All right, Mr. Andre, you're up with the most interesting story of the day. So researchers at a security company called Sysdig said they caught the first ransomware attack run entirely by AI. So take us through what happened.
Yeah. So best analogy I can give, a little dig at Randy. So back in the days, there was these things called maps, and when you were driving, you had to follow the map to see where you can go. And if there was a block, you had to figure it out yourself, because there was no GPS to tell you what the next step was, or it couldn't look 5 steps ahead.
You had to know where you were on your own.
Exactly. So the same analogy now, where a burglar is trying to break into a home or a business, whatever, and he is trying to do this safe combination, and he's trying to figure it out, but there's like, oh no, it's this version or this firmware, and now he has to like maybe Google or come back the next day, or he just can't break into it. So now, and we've talked about this before, but this is the first time it's actually now being seen in the wild, as they say, where the AI is basically saying, okay, I'm in this system. It's a Fortinet system. It's a Windows system. It has this version of Windows, and I know that there's a known vulnerability for computers with this version, with running antivirus or not running antivirus, and they can basically self-program itself to now know what the next step is going to be. And as it goes into a roadblock, it just basically, in a sense, Googles itself and says, oh, okay, because of this, now do that. And that's what we're seeing. And this is really the future of how cyber attacks are going to happen. And this is the first known attack that they're now seeing in the real world.
Dang. So I was reading about it, Andre, and they know it's AI because every line had documentation on it. And they say that that AI does that by default, but a human won't go in there, especially when they're writing malware, especially one-offs and stuff like that, that a human's less likely to do that. And then also, it was probably vibe coded because the AI, when it made the attack, it popped up the decryption key on the screen one time, and that was it. And then after that, it was gone forever. So now they have a victim who's encrypted and can't be decrypted, at least in our lifetimes, can't be decrypted. So, looks like they were vibe coding it to get to this place. I wonder what AI they used to trick, into thinking it was doing something good, or if they used a bad AI like a Chat GPT or something,
So part of how researchers knew it was AI was not a person. The attacker left plain English notes inside code explaining what it was doing next. The kind of narration a chatbot writes by habit and a criminal never would write. Then, when the login failed, when one of the logins it had failed, the AI diagnosed the problem, rewrote its own code, and was back in within about 31 seconds, right? So that already tells you that if your defense depends on one person noticing and reacting, you're already in trouble. So that puts a lot of services like almost obsolete if you really think about it, right? So then it got in through an internet-facing tool with a known unpatched flaw and no password, which is what IBM says exactly what is the number one way attacks started last year at 40% of the incidents from its X-Force threat index were these unpatched publicly facing systems, right? So 40% of the time, right? So if they're not getting in through tricking your employees through phishing, they're going in through your unpatched devices. And I don't know if you guys pay attention to the forum that we belong to together, right? The big group, as they call it, right? When I was giving people a heads up about a certain device that, hey, you might want to take a look at this and make sure it's really patched or something. And I got shit posted on for like half the day because people were like, whoa. And it's like the reason I posted is because the data tells me otherwise. The data tells me that like you all might think you're patching really well, but somewhere, some way, we're getting it wrong. Mm-hmm. So maybe it's not you, maybe it's your competitor, but I don't know.
It's like when everybody raises on a poker hand. I always say when that happens when I'm playing, I always say everybody can't be right here, guys. But and what you're saying is so true. And I saw that, and it really is. And we're off the topic here a little bit, but it's really brand loyalty and them just thinking, oh, my brand here that I'm fighting for is the greatest. And maybe. I know you brought it up because that's how the AI got in here. Was the patch on the system was released a year ago, and it's had the same default password for the past 6 years. So default password from 2020 and a unpatched system from over a year ago. So the AI didn't even have to do anything like super tricky, right? Didn't have to be super ingenious. Just find an unpatched vulnerability and then move on it.
No tokens were used for this hack. They were
Nope. But here's the kicker on this one, guys. Is I don't know if you read it, but the reporting from the company that figured this out, they suggested that even if the victim paid, the way that the AI handled the encryption meant that there was effectively no key to hand back.
That's right. It popped up one time on the screen, and that was it.
That's wild. So very, very interesting stuff. So anything else you want to add before we wrap it up for today?
Yeah, I don't think we all realize this going in, but notice how each article we talked about, yours, Bryan, was an unknown, did they pay or not? Mine was they paid, they're still getting screwed. And then Andre's is, doesn't matter if they want to pay or not, their data's gone. And maybe these guys also exfiltrated it, and they can pay to keep it from being leaked to the world or whatever. But that AI encrypted that thing, and ain't nobody getting it back anytime.
This AI, man, it sounds like
vibe code.
I'm not trying to be funny here, but you've literally, AI cybersecurity, we've literally turned like technology and running a business with technology into the Strait of Hormuz. You have no idea what's going to happen.
Yep.
You just have no idea.
Right.
So here we go. Andre rolled his eyes.
The new frontier.
He doesn't like my Strait of Hormuz.
No comment.
All right, guys, we'll wrap it up here. So global giant and, a small city down the road and an attacker that isn't even human anymore just points at the size of the target doesn't really matter anymore. It mattered a long time ago. It just doesn't matter anymore. So, what decides how these stories end is boring, and it's the same every time. Do you have your backups? Was multi-factor turned on? Were your systems patched, right? The tools got smarter, but the fundamentals, the blocking and tackling just doesn't change, right? These tools are just going to take advantage of these weaknesses quicker and faster than they ever have before. But it doesn't change anything that we've been telling you have to do since we started this podcast, 5+ years ago, right? And as we always say, nobody is too small to be hacked, and the basics still decide who survives and who gets picked on, right? The bullies in the schoolyard pick on the ones who aren't prepared, right? If you're prepared, you punch your bully back in the face, they move on, right? And that's what happens. So as always, head over to securitysquawk.com, check out our website for the full breakdown, and do us a favor, subscribe and leave a review so more owners, more business people, more IT professionals find this content. Randy, Andre, and I thank you all for your support, and we'll see everyone next week. Take care.
Bye, everybody.
See you later.